Breaking Up with Addiction is proudly supported by experts you can trust. Kindbridge Behavioral Health. Safe, non-judgmental counseling just a tap away. I'm Corinne Wright, certified recovery and executive coach.
And I'm Gwendolyn Boyd McGee, licensed professional clinical counselor. Welcome to Breaking Up with Addiction. I hope you got your homework done. So just to review, last week's homework was for you to identify a coping skill or strategy that you can utilize to help with intrusive thoughts. I hope that you were able to get that done because it can be very beneficial in your journey of recovery.
In today's episode of Breaking Up with Addiction, we delve into the fascinating role of dopamine in driving both gambling and video gaming behaviors. We have a very special guest joining us, Dr. Daniel Kauffman, who will provide expert insights on how dopamine is triggered by these activities and the impact it has on addictive behaviors, as well as steps to break free from these cycles.
But first, let's do some trivia, Corinne.
Let's go, Gwen.
Okay, so this is the question. I'm trying a different format, so I'm super excited about this. But the question is, in the U.S., which of the following is not a factor associated with increased risk of gambling disorder? So you have options. So A, having a history of mental health issues like anxiety or depression. B, experiencing stressful life events or periods of financial difficulty. C is having a strong belief in the ability to beat the system or predict outcomes. And lastly, D, being a low-income individual.
Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with this trivia. You should see my eyes going from left to right, like the cartoon. I'm like, I can't wait for you to deliver the answer to that trivia, Gwen.
And I will have an answer for the listeners later in the show.
Beautiful. Well, let's get to Dr. Kauffman. Dr. Kauffman is an associate professor at Grand Canyon University and has served in multiple roles related to program development for treating gambling and video gaming issues in clinical settings. He is the author of The Gamer's Journey, a 2024 book focused on explaining the presence of gaming in society and forms of mythological storytelling and how these characters and settings can be used therapeutically for every gamer to complete each phase of the hero's journey in their own lives. Dr. Kauffman is currently serving as the co-chair of the APA Research Task Force on Video Game Issues and is working on several nationwide training programs to help mental health professionals understand video games in innovative ways. His research on the psychology of player types has been presented internationally and continues to evolve with each new world players can inhabit across PCs and consoles. To further his mission of educating counseling professionals to better support clients who are interested in games-related issues, Dr. Kauffman is also a former board president and current board member of the International Problem Gambling and Gaming Certification, which establishes trainings and expertise standards for counseling and prevention professionals to assist clients who enjoy or struggle with gambling and video game activities. Welcome to Breaking Up with Addiction, Dr. Kauffman. It's so great to have you.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me today.
Yes, it's an awesome opportunity. So, Dr. Kauffman, we'd like to kind of get into understanding dopamine and addiction. So I have a question for you. Your recent article mentions dopamine's role in both gambling and gaming. Can you explain how slot machines and loot boxes hook the brain in very similar ways?
All right, we're diving straight into the big topics.
Straight into it.
Yeah, so dopamine is a major neurotransmitter for reward and reinforcement in the brain. Okay, so when we get a firing of dopamine when something happens to us or when we're thinking about something happening to us, it's going to cause a connection that makes our brain send signals to us that says in the future, hey, you should want to do this because it feels really good. It makes us happy. It gives us a reward. Rewards are good. Everybody wants to get a trophy. Everyone loves getting little ribbons that say first place. Everyone loves getting certificates that say, hey, you achieved something. And when those moments happen, or when we're getting excited because we know they're about to happen, think about Christmas and Christmas Eve and waking up in the morning, but you can't have your presents yet, especially in childhood. And so dopamine has a relationship between us and our brains from childhood that gets reinforced over and over by the things that make us feel happy.
Look at that.
Right.
That's intense. That when you think about that, when you started talking about how from childhood you have this reward system that's being developed, and then we think about as adults, that's like a muscle that we're constantly building and needing more.
Yeah, absolutely. And dopamine is a very short-term kind of pleasure reward system. So you get that shot, right? Think about when you have things that have like boosts. So like having an espresso or something, you know, like you have those shots in the drink, and it's different than coffee because it's like, bam, you know, within 30 seconds that you just had a shot of espresso.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what dopamine is. And then we also have other pleasure reward neurotransmitters that occur for us differently from different kinds of sensations. And one of those is serotonin, but that's more of a long-term mood stability kind of reward chemical. So serotonin is more like, in general, how's your day going? And is it exciting? And is it happy? But the dopamine is like having that shot of espresso.
Right.
Okay. And loot boxes and gambling games are specifically designed to give you those shots of pleasure reward adrenaline.
Wow.
And because you are waiting to see what happens, and that anticipation in between the button press, I've made the decision to purchase this, and then the unwrapping, the unboxing. And then,
my gosh, you just described me ordering on Amazon.
Exactly. Except on Amazon, when you click to purchase it, you know 100% that it's going to end up at your door within 1 to 2 days. And if it doesn't, you can call Amazon, say, hey, you screwed me. That's really not fair. And Amazon will say, oh, you're totally right. Here's your money back. Or, oh, you're totally right. We'll send you another one. We're so sorry. In gambling, it's like, oh, yeah, you did lose. LOL.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I do have a question for you here, Dr. Kauffman. We just did an episode all about the cognitive and how the brain works when it comes to gambling, and the brain's response to these rewards seems to be so powerful. Why do you think people continue to chase these highs even when the risk of addiction is so clear?
Okay. So this is a little tongue in cheek, but if both of you know me and your listeners will hopefully get to know me, hopefully I'll be on the show a lot more and get to be a repeat guest, and you'll start having this big relationship with me, and you'll know kind of my shtick that I go through when I'm talking about addiction and electronics and video games and things like that. I'm a pessimist, okay, which is not as normal, I guess. I mean, I when I talk to other counselors, I think that we represent optimism and hope and growth and repairing damages in life and overcoming trauma. And I help people with those things, but I do it from more of a place of, the world sucks, life is hard, so let's make the most out of it. Very, very at least pragmatic on my happy days, pessimistic on my days where I'm struggling too. And that actually helps me not to become a gambler. Because when I talk to people who gamble, their relationship with odds and risk is so hopeful and optimistic. I look at some of my favorite video games where there are loot boxes, and I look at how fun it would be if I opened that loot box and I got the diamond tier champion level fighter for my squad. And if we want a specific video game, I'm thinking about WWE 2K25. I play that a lot, and I'm a huge wrestling fan for people who don't know. But when I'm thinking about opening a pack in that game and I want this diamond tier John Cena or Roman Reigns, people that have been the WWE champion, but I want the diamond tier one. So I know I have less than a 1% chance of the pack opening and giving me that, which means I have a 99% chance of getting a card that I don't want.
Yeah.
Okay. I see those odds. And it's like, oh, okay. So I can get 10 of these packs for $40. I'm going to not buy that because those odds aren't good enough for me to part with my money. And so if you have enough negativity in your thoughts and you realize the odds are bad, for me, that's enough for me to sidestep the activity and keep my money.
So if you're saying that you're coming from like a view of a more pessimistic view, like the odds are, you're being more realistic on the odds, really. But what's the difference? Okay, people don't normally do what you do. So what is it that they normally do when it comes to that?
Well, the first time I ever played a slot machine, I lost $5 in 2 button presses, and that was the end of that. So for me, slot machines are about losing. Yeah. But in gambling addiction, and when we research this from a scientific perspective and we get hundreds or even thousands of gambling people in our sample with all different ranges of their story, from successful to disappointing to decimated. Mm-hmm. You see in those decimated individuals that they won early and they won an amount that was significant to them. And that's one of the brightest moments when they can tell stories about what are some of the best moments in your life. And they, you know, the gambling experience of winning big is going to be in that list of moments. Mm-hmm. And we call that the winning phase. And that's actually the first stage on a path of someone who develops what we call gambling disorder in the mental health field. It's not that you lose and you decide this is fun. It's that you won an amount out of nowhere, unexpected, unearned, but lucky.
Yeah.
And it defined your day, your week, your month, your year. And it created a high that you haven't felt very many times since. And you want to recapture that moment. So
right.
There's this happy memory around it, and there's a nostalgia around trying to get that moment again. And so the winning phase is terrifying
because they're feeling really optimistic and they feel like they did it once before, so they can do it again. And so that's kind of how the chasing the losses really occur, right? With that frame of mind.
Yeah, and you said something so important there, and I want to put a spotlight on it. You said that they think they can do it again, as if their action had anything to do with the outcome.
Right.
Right? You know, you have no chance of actually controlling what happens in a gambling game. And if you think you do, that's smoke and mirrors. The only thing you can do in certain games is to understand odds and probability. But once you start using that strategically, you can get accused of cheating, like counting cards in blackjack. Mm-hmm. You know, you're not allowed to do that. Or knowing, based on the cards I'm holding in Texas Hold'em, what are the odds that if I don't fold, I can win this hand? Right? That you can calculate that in your head and make smarter choices, but you can't control what cards the other players are holding, and you can't control the 5 cards that get revealed from the dealer. So even if you have wisdom and insight into the probability side of the game you're playing, you're still relying on luck and also the confidence or lack of confidence in your competition.
Wow.
I want to ask you, you said earlier, you mentioned loot boxes, and could you explain to the listeners what a loot box is?
Yeah. So if we want to go old school before we had technology to do our games, it's like opening a pack of baseball cards. You know, you have the tin foil, you know, inside there's 5 cards, 7 cards, 10 cards. You give the money to the clerk at the register. You get your receipt. That card is yours. You tear it open. You slide the cards out and you flip them over and you look at what you got. And you're really hoping you get your favorite player on your favorite team with a glossy finish on it or some extra special effects or a moment where they hit that big home run. And when you get that card, you feel super lucky, like that was a great pack to buy. And maybe you'll buy more packs in the future because you're lucky and you always get your favorite players. That's the winning phase, by the way. Mm-hmm. And if you don't get any players that you care about and you have an extra $10, you might buy another pack because it's really disappointing to go home with only crappy cards. So you really want just that one good card that makes it feel like it was worth the bike ride to the gas station. And in video games, we call these packs of baseball cards loot boxes because they're not packs of cards in a physical sense. You can't hold them in your hands and put them in a binder. And you can't sell them 50 years from now for $1,000 a piece. They are digital goods and they help your team get stronger inside a video game usually. And so it's the same principle. You spend $5 for one pack, $10 for 5 packs, whatever it is, spend $50 for 10 packs. And you just click to open one card at a time, reveal them on the screen, and see if you got a card that will make your team stronger. This can be wrestling. It can be football or basketball. Madden has this. NBA 2K has this. And it can also be other kinds of games completely. Pokemon games on your smartphone have this. And you can collect Pokemon cards in real life by walking down to Target and buying those packs. Or you can collect them on your phone now with the Pokemon trading card game from your Apple and Google Play Store, right?
Okay, so you can purchase cards and you can pay like $5 or $10. If a lot of people are doing this, it sounds like the gaming industry is making a lot of money off of the loot boxes. Would you say that?
Absolutely. These are called microtransactions. And the history of microtransactions, around 2006, when you bought a video game, you got what you bought. And whatever is in the game, that's what it is. And sometimes you'd get what we call a patch from the game developers where they fix something. They give you an extra amount of code to download into the game and it fixes something that didn't work right. But that doesn't cost money. You buy the game, you own the game, and all the stuff that's supposed to be in the game is in the game. But in 2006, Bethesda decided to add armor for a horse that you could buy with extra money. So you don't need to have armor on your horse, but if you want the armor on your horse when you ride it, you can pay this extra couple dollars, and now your horse is fancier than other people's horses that don't have armor. Right. And that became a massive financial positive for the Bethesda studio that creates Elder Scrolls. Uh-huh. It changed the history of video games forever because now almost every video game has a microtransaction where you buy the game and you can play the game the regular way. You can enjoy it. But if you want to look fancier, if you have a female character and you want to look a little bit sexier or flashy while you're doing your combat, you can buy that special dress or special outfit. If you play like a warrior guy and you want the big armor with the spikes on it and the customizable paint job, you can buy it. And these are not things that you get by playing the game. These are things that you get in the game by doing an extra purchase.
Right. So if a parent saw that their child was like coming maybe back and forth very frequently saying, hey, can I use your credit card, or I need extra money to make purchases on my game, could this be that they are maybe trying to look for that one card that you talked about earlier, because they're looking to get that one. They keep purchasing more and more, which is kind of similar, I guess, to chasing a loss in a way to the brain.
It is exactly chasing a loss in the brain. And also, they don't have to ask their parent for the credit card every single time because these consoles are going to remember the card and attach it to the player's account.
Oh my.
And so it's very important as a parent to understand how to activate the security features on microtransactions and make sure that the child does not know the password to authorize the purchase for that credit card. So on my consoles in my house, it's all my debit cards or credit cards that are connected to the Switches and to the PlayStations and to the Steam library, all the different places where you can buy games and buy the extra content for the games. And so I don't know if my son knows my password or not at this point. He probably could guess it because he's seen some of the times where I'm moving the cursor on the keyboard on the screen to pick the letters and capitalize and add some punctuation and numbers in and all that stuff. But he's never betrayed me and tried to buy something, tried to figure out the password. And so the reason that I'm still in charge of those transactions is because for me, it's very important for me to have a relative idea of how my account balances are, especially with my debit cards. Because with credit cards, if you max out and you go over your limit, it will decline. And that's a really good thing for this kind of situation is unless
you have a really high credit limit. And then you may get your statement and say, and start screaming when you see $2,000.
Well, I don't put my high limit credit cards on my PlayStation for that very reason.
No, I mean, just in general for our listeners, I'm talking to the parents,
I am too. Yeah. Don't put your high limit credit card on your child's Xbox. Please don't do that.
Right.
If you have a card that's a $1,500 limit or even like below $1,000 limit, that's more than enough for the kid to be able to do a couple microtransactions a month and never hit that limit and never inconvenience you in a life altering kind of way. And it's really important to think about that stuff because you can love your kid and you can trust your kid. But if they're getting that dopamine rush where you're waiting to see, did I get the thing this time? That's a bigger push in the reward center of your brain than actually getting the thing is wondering if you're going to get the thing.
Right. So you have provided us with so much good information. I'd like to kind of move it towards like tolerance and cycles. Okay. So you've written about tolerance in gambling and gaming. Can you explain how someone might recognize when their habits are escalating out of control?
Sure. So tolerance is just this idea that you started out needing a little bit of something to feel a huge amount of benefit. And then you get used to that feeling. And over time, your brain says, well, let's get a little more. Let's get a little more. That was a little boring. That wasn't the big rush that we remember it was. Let's just keep pushing it. Push the boundaries, push the envelope, try to get us more. And there are some evolutionary reasons why this didn't start out as a bad thing. Because, in more simple times before technology and all these games to have fun, having fun was a big deal and it wasn't a normal part of your day, especially in hunter-gatherer kinds of times or in ancient Rome or Greece kind of times where the rush that you get would be going to the Colosseum and seeing people get eaten by a lion, right? You're not getting the huge dopamine blast from a gambling game when you're watching that. It's just thrilling because of the way society works. And that's the limit of that kind of rush. But now we have these games where you can get as much of a rush just by deciding to participate as much as you want to. And unlike in substance-based issues where you might be drinking a lot and you want that relaxation, but eventually that relaxation is going to knock you out, put you to sleep, or make it so you're losing time and you don't remember stuff when your brain comes back into focus. Gambling does not have that limit. Spending money does not have that limit, especially if your financial systems allow you to go into the negative and bounce your accounts or have a little bit more flexibility to keep going, and they'll stop you and penalize you later.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Like with credit or with cash advances or personal loans. And so tolerance with gambling and video game transactions can really wreck you. But in digital transactions, like where you authorize your face or where you press your thumbprint on something, our brains do not recognize when we spend $45, $95, $150. Our brain doesn't have a good ability to have a running total. Compare that to our starting balance and realize you're almost done. It's not like handing cash over to a cashier where I have 100, a 50, two 20s, and a 10 in my pocket. That's $200, right? So if I know I have that $200 cash in my pocket, and this is 10 years ago when we still did transactions this way, then I know if I hand over 65 to someone at the grocery store that regardless of my mathematical ability, I know I have between 100 and 150 left. And if I have really good mathematical ability, then I know I have 135 left. And when you do a microtransaction by authorizing your face and you do it 3 or 4 times in a 20-minute period, you don't know exactly how much you have. And you may have spent more than that 200 already.
Right. Yeah.
So, Dr. Kauffman, when you were talking about the cards, the loot boxes, and how, Gwen asked the question where a kid could come back and keep asking for money or keep going online and trying to get that card, there's something else that's very similar to that in the gambling world. It's so fascinating, and it's the near miss moment. And I would love for you to tell us what you've learned about how these moments trick the brain into chasing losses.
Oh man, it's such a trick. It's the okey doke of the gambling industry on our brains. So I actually happen to be holding in my hand right now, and you can see on webcam, but this is an audio podcast. So listeners, I am holding a D20, which if you've ever played a tabletop role-playing game, a D20 is just what we call a 20-sided dice, right? Okay. Now, because it has 20 sides, the numbers on it are 1 to 20. So 20 is the best one. So there are some times where if I roll this dice, I would want it to be a 20. And then sometimes I roll a 19. Okay. And that is very close to a 20, right? Can both of you agree that 19 is very close to 20?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. The problem is when you roll a dice, 19 is not close to 20. 19 is 5% of the available outcomes, just like 20 is 5% of the available outcomes. Rolling the number 7 or 3 or 1 has exactly the same odds as rolling 20. Therefore, every time I toss this dice onto the table, I'm not closer to having 20 if I roll a 16 compared to if I roll an 8, right? I'm not closer. But the brain, especially if you're in a gambling moment, thinks, oh, we were so close. Let's roll again.
Yeah.
But rolling again costs us another $5. No, shut up, brain. That's dumb. We were so close. And so you roll
this time, right?
So you roll again. I gotta get it this time. It happens when you play the lottery. If you need to get 5 numbers perfect to win $45 million and you get 4 of them and you were 10 away from the 5th number being right. First off, that is a very lucky roll, and you probably did win some money anyway, and you should feel very happy with yourself being that lucky. But the near miss thing is going to click into your brain, and you're going to think, man, if I only would have added a 10 to that last number, I'd have more money than I need for the rest of my life. And that's true. And this very happy moment now became a disappointing moment. And unfortunately, all the money that you won from being close to perfect on that guess, you're going to spend all of it on your next set of lottery tickets. You're going to spend all of that on your next batch of lottery tickets because you're so convinced that you were close. You weren't, you were close, but you weren't closer than if that 5th number was 1,000 away from being right.
Right. Yeah, but the brain just kind of tricks them in thinking that, hey, if you keep going, you're almost there. You're going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Dr. Kauffman, at Kindbridge, you work real closely with clients dealing with gambling addiction. How do you help them break free from the dopamine-driven cycles that reinforce the gambling behaviors?
Dopamine is not the enemy here. Dopamine actually is a very helpful chemical for our ability to recognize when good things happen to us in our life. Mm-hmm. And from a behavioral perspective, we learn early on in life and continue throughout our lifespan to recognize those moments and hope to make them happen more often. Okay. And as a survival instinct, that's very helpful, because if you get through a traffic light without any stress and without feeling like you almost caught a collision, that means that you drove correctly, and you should want to repeat that behavior every single time you approach an intersection.
Yes, that's such a good analogy.
It is.
And when we talk addiction counseling too much, we sometimes start teaching our clients about only the negative aspects of dopamine, because it is so locked into being the short-term reward motivation chemical that is motivated the most by our worst decisions in life. But our worst decisions in life, when we're talking addiction, are the decisions that lead to the best feelings in life, right?
Right.
And so there are ways to play games that are healthy for you that do not put you on the verge of homelessness. There are ways to engage in behaviors that are relaxing, but do not threaten to turn you into an alcoholic. And there are ways to embrace our relationships in a way that does lead to feel-good chemicals like both dopamine and oxytocin, but do not lead to becoming a sex addict. And the reality of addiction counseling is teaching people to find the positivity in life, whether they're neurotransmitters or behaviors that lead to chemical rewards, but earn those moments in a healthy way that doesn't sacrifice your value system.
Right. Absolutely. And that's the work that I think all of us are trying to do at Kindbridge. Yeah.
Do or do not. There is no try.
I love that. I love the voice too.
So with that, the excellent work that we are doing at Kindbridge.
Amen, Gwen. Yes to all of that. Dr. Kauffman, for listeners who are struggling with gambling or gaming impulses, what's one practical step they can take today to regain control?
If you think that the way you're playing these games is hurting the flow of your day or disconnecting you from the version of yourself that you wish you were, then the next time you have an urge to play, just challenge yourself to wait 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes. Just go do something else. Challenge yourself to do something slower. Slow it down and see if that thing you chose felt like a benefit to you. It might not, but you still did it, and you still gave yourself a chance to reevaluate your day and say, did I need this game? Did I need this play? Did I need this chance at luck to define my day? Because the thing about luck defining your day is you don't control how your day is going anymore. And if you're powerless over that activity, then choosing things where you do have a choice can be among the most empowering things you can do. So just take a break from the thing that takes your power away and choose yourself for just a moment and see what happens next.
Wow, I can really see someone like practicing small moments of that on a consistent basis. And I can see that like changing something if it's consistently aimed at as a practice.
Yeah, well said by both of you. So, Dr. Kauffman, how can people find you?
You can find me on all the social medias with @Dr. Gameology, all one word. And I'm lucky enough that all my handles line up like that. Specifically, some of my best content, if you want to really connect with what I'm doing in the public side of the internet, that would be twitch.tv/Dr. Gameology, where I stream games and talk about the mental health elements and storytelling elements of all the things that video games can give us in our life from a positive perspective. And that also ties into my book, The Gamer's Journey, which is about how video games are the modern mythology and how, I was always fascinated with mythology as a child and learned a lot about ancient civilizations and things from the gods and the stories and the hero characters that they gave us in our fiction. And I just started seeing video games like that early on in my life as a psychology professional. And so I'm really proud of the book. So if you also want to find me that way, you can buy a copy of The Gamer's Journey at your favorite bookstore or my online store. If you go to drgameology.com, I have a merch store there. So Dr. Gameology, is the phrase that will lead you to find me, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, Threads, Twitch, YouTube, books, all of it.
Wow. Thank you so much for coming, Dr. Kauffman. I've enjoyed this time. I know our listeners have enjoyed this time, and we just thank you for showing up today.
Yeah, it was super fun. Thanks for having me.
And we will make sure that we have you on again in the future.
Yeah, anytime. I always love talking to both of you.
Thank you.
So, Corinne, are you ready for today's trivia answer?
I am, because this is the only one I don't know of all the trivia we've done. I admit, I don't know.
Okay, so the correct answer is C, having a strong belief in the ability to beat the system or predict outcomes. And let me explain that.
Please do.
While financial problems, stressful life events, and mental health issues can contribute to problem gambling, the belief in beating the system is primarily a motivation factor. It can increase the engagement in gambling, but it's not a direct risk factor for developing the disorder. So that was kind of a tricky.
I'm so glad you broke that down, because I was sitting, you should have saw my eyes going. I'm like, wait a minute. Is this a trick question? I think I know my stuff, but I did not know that. But I love that. I love that, because that detail does make a difference.
It does. Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll give you all some homework today.
Yes, they need homework.
They need homework. Today's homework is we want you to reflect on your relationship with dopamine-driven behaviors. Have you ever experienced a near-miss moment in gambling or gaming that led you to continue to pursue the activity despite the risks? How did it make you feel at the moment? And how do you think understanding dopamine's role can change how you approach these behaviors going forward? So that's today's homework. We want to make sure you always have the support you need to fight this disorder. And that's why we give homework every week. So please take the homework seriously.
Addiction doesn't define you, and breaking up with it doesn't have to be a solo mission. Kindbridge Behavioral Health offers safe, non-judgmental support anytime from anywhere. Visit kindbridge.com/appointments and start getting the help you deserve today.